Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Sorry for keeping you a few minutes. Uh, we need to really always think of some kind of options whenever we look into some kind of presentations, and the opportunities do normally arise. Before I begin this presentation, I wish to thank the organizers of the Dhirubhai Institute of Communication Technology. Done a great job. I must also thank the Credila HDFC team who have really put their efforts to get this technical support. Without their help, my message to you all would have been not accomplished. Well, we are two important states in this country, and I always used to say that Maharashtra and Gujarat have a very strong connectivity, not only through borders, but also through their contribution to make India in terms of economic growth. If you probably see the annual GDP coming from these two states contribute more than 40%, which means we are certainly enterprising. Let me begin with this. What I'm going to talk to you is not something different, but which all of you think and all of you are already working. But I would like to add on a few of my experiences and thoughts so that that might trigger a better thought process to you people and engage you as better citizens for tomorrow. I always say developing entrepreneurship is a different ball game. And we as professionals would always like to encourage young, dynamic individuals, young minds to rethink, to reinvent, and make a difference in the society. Let me possibly first come to a fundamental question is what are the challenges today? We probably see many things around us. There are many things which are pleasant and many things which are unpleasant. And the unpleasant things make us more concerned than the pleasant things. And with the current pandemic, which everybody is talking, the moment you open the television, the first thing what you see is a pandemic. So this is certainly disturbing. And I was talking to a few psychologists, and they have been saying this in the US and the rest of the world. The social behavior of people have been changing radically, both within them and around them. So this certainly becomes a challenge to us. The next question comes is, what are our ambitions? Are our ambitions going to be sidelined because of what you see around us? Do we take us to the next level? And if at all we need to do this, what should be the key drivers to achieve this? So what is needed? People talk about many things around us, but I probably feel that what is important for us is a good leadership, an unbiased leadership. What I mean by unbiased, I mean that a leader should be one who could possibly drive with no personal intentions, but look at the consequences of the situation and assist the followers to lead in a positive way. This also helps us to understand the opportunity to grow and have what I call a passion for a vision. When somebody comes and asks me as a student, sir, I want to make a career in setting up a business, I would say, I don't think building a business is a career. Building a business is more about passion, because an entrepreneur is a person who never sleeps. An entrepreneur is a person who is always awake. He observes. He's a person who translates his ideas into reality. He's a person who takes risk. He's a person who becomes a role model in the later part of his life. So I've been thinking on what is the generic problem that what you see today in this world. So the statement of the problem lies around us. There are about 7 billion people on this planet. 10% of them receive the best of education, the best of medical, the best of housing, the best of energy, the best of lifestyle, and the rest also want to enjoy the same. Now, how do you get this? Who are the people who can be the drivers to achieve this? I can confidently say, sharing my last 35 years of experience in this industry, both in the academia and in consulting, that the only possible way to resolve is to encourage entrepreneurs and innovators. These are the only people who can really make a change, who can really drive. Let me take this example. Take a year ago in India, March 2020, what was India's situation in the vaccination stage? What was the situation in the epidemic stage? What was the situation in the economic stage? Practically within a year, we are able to achieve, which I don't think any feat could have been done in the medical history so far in our country. We not only are able to provide vaccine to our own people, largely, I will not say completely, but largely, but at the same time, we have also exported to those countries which need medicine to almost 18 to 20 countries across the globe. This can happen only because there's been innovation, there have been scientists and entrepreneurs are ready to invest. So, whenever I talk to my students and talk to educators, I normally push them. I'm a rather a critic person, and people consider me as a critic largely because I'm very blunt and open. They always say, what should be the goals of education today? We talk about changing the education policies. To me, it is putting, I would say, too many eggs in the basket. Fundamentally, there are three factors that should govern education. One, it should build the skills and competencies that can allow you to be a part of a local, regional, and the national labor market. If your skills that are built in the educational institutions do not meet the local and the regional and the national market, it doesn't serve the purpose. The second important thing I consider from a socialistic point of view, that it should assist in resolving societal issues. If the educational system or the education curricula or the pedagogy of education does not involve societal issues, what does that education mean? We are actually working on the European Union, and we are building up what is called a global university. The concept of global university is through three very important stakeholders. One, the government, which we call it as public policy management. The second are the industry captains, people from the private sector. And the third are from the academia. In all probabilities, to make your education successful, all the three players should come together, understand what we need to do to make our planet, our place more livable. The government has a policy which the industry is not very clear. The industry has its own priorities which the academicians are not very clear. So everything becomes a separate vertical without connectivity. That does not solve the problem. We have engineers but cannot help the society to resolve issues. Take an example of transportation. Take an example of energy crisis. Take an example of water crisis. Take an example of climate change. All these are societal problems. Garbage management, recycling. All these are societal issues. And the only way that can be resolved is through a very strong connectivity between the three stakeholders. Countries that have developed today, countries that have brought in that change have been successful because they bring all these stakeholders together. The third important thing, which I always say, it should build leaders to meet the needs for tomorrow's challenges. Leaders who have a vision. I had made in one of the conferences a very critical remark that a large portion of our university heads do not have a vision. And that might be a little critical to many people. But I could possibly ask you, tell me a single innovation that we could make that the world is following today. What is needed today is leaders in academia, leaders in industry, leaders in the government. And if you have to build them from the institution where you and I belong. And it is the youth who will really substitute the future leaders to eventually face those challenges. Somebody asked me that what could be the main focus to build sustainable entrepreneurs? I would possibly put them in 10 important points. And this is something what I really felt. There could be more, but I think 10 is an optimum number to nurture the young entrepreneurs. The first one, which I always believe, is being optimistic. It's good to be optimistic than pessimism. If somebody comes with half a glass of water, skeptics, pessimist people will say it is half empty. I would say it is half full because I'm optimistic. There's nothing to be positive. There's nothing wrong to be positive. Even if there are failures, take it from a positive point of view. Give that confidence. I would engage the academia. I would engage the professors. I would engage the academicians to give more confidence among the students, because the confidence is the only thing that can make these people come out of those failures, because failures are temporary, cannot be permanent. So I say, don't run away from failures. If you ask me, is there any single innovation that has come without a failure? I was at the Nobel House last year in 2019, sorry, and I really saw the Nobel Prize winners' experiments, right from Edison. Alfred Nobel contribution to the world, to the society, is unmatchable. And they all come out of failures. So don't run away from failures. I consider that every problem has an opportunity. Whenever you look into a problem, look at, oh, I have an opportunity to resolve this. Assume that you're in the middle of a road where no one is there and your vehicle gets conked up. What do? Do you just stand there, try to open up, do a zigzag, try to start it, use, probably you find something there and you're able to see something, you're able to examine something, and it starts kicking. I always say, if someone has to climb the Mount Everest, it is no straight road. You need to go zigzag up, down, and first go to the base camp. So if you have to resolve problems, convert them into opportunities. And those opportunities are those that will give them a message to take more challenging routes rather than an easy pathway. As an entrepreneur, pick up the best ones and work for it. Most of the time, when people come with too many options, it becomes confusing. I can do this, can I do this? I want to do this. I don't think that's a good idea. Pick up the best. So whenever I used to tell my students before the examination, when you get your question paper, usually you just glance for the first 5-10 minutes and you try to look at a question which is more complex and spend more time. Avoid that. So in a similar way, take the question which is easier and start solving it. Gradually, you will also be able to solve the difficult ones. So pick up the best one and work on it. Do not make excuses. Very important. As an entrepreneur, you cannot make an excuse. You cannot say it's not possible. I'm running away from it. No. You have to get into it. You have to resolve this. That should be the first intention or a stimulus that should come in your mind. Be innovative and think differently. To a very large extent, we seldom think differently. If there is a problem and the problem is put to 30 students in the class, all the 30 students can give me 30 different ways of resolving it, and each solution can be good and it can be innovative, because your thinking process becomes more critical. You build a logical derivation. I think that's very important for a young entrepreneur. In the past, you used to have innovators as separate people and entrepreneurs as separate people. Today, we bridge them together, and you see most of the successful entrepreneurs are also innovators. I'll come to those points a little later in my slide. Now, every area has an opportunity for innovation. This is something which I always tell to my audience. People seldom do not look into areas which are non-conventional. Take an example of agriculture. Is there no innovation? There can be an innovation. But if you probably know, when burger was made, it was made as a midday meal for the Western population. And it was made in such a recipe that it gives all the nutrients to the person who consumes it. But it took almost 40 nutritionists, 25 doctorates to sit down together to build a burger, which you probably today has even moved from the Western civilization to India. So there is every opportunity in agriculture. I will be talking about little at a later part of my slide. Medicine, medical sciences, transportation, climate, energy resource, you name it, and I can give you, there is an innovation, there is a scope for innovation. So do not look into the conventional areas of innovation and look into the unconventional way, and that will make your things much more stronger and you can be unique in the industry. Be experimental. Most of the times we do not like to do experimentation. We don't like to test. Remember, we are not high risk takers. But in one of the important messages which Subsidiary, who is an entrepreneur expert, said that risk leads to uncertain profits. Unless and until you take risk, you won't be successful. There could be highs and there can be lows, but that can be done only when you experiment. And do not depend on just one single business. Make multiple businesses, however, make one business strong, make it steadier, and the rest can be exploratory so that it can cross-functionalize. Be ready to be challenged. Every entrepreneur should remember that there is nothing like he becomes number one always. The moment he becomes number one, he should remember he has to count the days where he will come to number two. It is not something that can be sustainable. Optimization reaches the point. It's just like moving on the top of the pyramid. So be ready to be challenged and accept the challenge. Any entrepreneur who does not accept a challenge cannot be successful on the long run. So there has to be a passion. It has to be driven by vision, a vision from a long-term sustainability. So be a risk taker and build a diverse team. What I mean by diverse team, I'll just give an example. Normally, when you recruit, the recruiter normally, when you see the top companies, the best blue chip companies, when they recruit people, they don't take people from the same discipline. They always like to take people from diverse segments of disciplines. Like, for example, I remember that Apple hired few psychologists and few musicians in their design team. You might wonder what will the psychologists and the musicians are going to do in the designing of the Apple mobile. But remember, the moment you see to purchase a product, the first thing that attracts you is the design, which is psychological. The sound, the music, the tone. So you should have people from diverse disciplines. So a good team would be something which has an extreme combination. And I'll come to that when I'm going to give some very interesting examples of how companies have become successful with diverse teams. So what is the first thing you need to do? You need to first know your goals and the areas of work. The areas to work should begin at a point when your confidence level has gone high. So how do you build your confidence? I always say, do not underestimate your enemy. So knowing what you do not know is more important than what you know, because the do not know can be a deterrent factor in making your business to fall. So the first thing to know is what you do not know. The second important thing that you should remember is to identify your liabilities and assets. There has to be a very clear balance sheet. Most of the people initially will try to spend more without understanding how to differentiate between the two, and then reach a point where your capital is not adequate to move further. So a good entrepreneur will always try to keep a balance between the two, because his asset structure is a driver to reduce your liabilities. Your liabilities has to be the minimum, and that's how you grow your assets. You may be not doing things very fast, but you can do things more steadily and more sustainably. You can't do a rocket science overnight, but if you can do that steadily, I'm sure you could be more successful, because successful entrepreneurs are always cautious in taking every step. The other point which I felt was important is between two kinds of goals, personal and corporate. Many times there is a conflict of interest in family businesses. So in a family business, personal goals are become a deterrent factor, whereas corporate goals are engineered by situations that are around with your business plans. So I would always say that when you make a business plan is good enough to make it, but many times you may not be able to be successful in implementing all the business aspects in the business plan. So keep your personal goals separately, keep your corporate goals separately. And I think that would possibly keep you away from getting eroded into the system. Competitors present versus future. I'm a man who believes more of a futuristic. Most of the time, we believe in the past and we talk more about the past. But the past is already over. Like somebody said, he is a specialist. And I always say, he is a specialist. There's no one as a specialist in the real terms. Maybe in the past terms, because he could be a specialist of the past, because by the time you see the world is moving so fast that there will be some more developments. So whenever my students ask me to refer a book, I say there is no single author who can really write everything about the topic. So there is no prescribed textbook. So it's more important that you go through the articles, go through the conversations, you go through those kind of processes where you can get more diverse information about a particular situation. So futuristic is more important. Building a roadmap looking 2035 or 2040 is what young entrepreneurs should start thinking about. And what do you all think about? Could be in various areas, could be in food and food production, could be in medical sciences, should be in energy, could be transport and space management, and so on. What this girl is looking for? I'm dreaming to have a compact house. I want to build a house of my dream. So you dare the dreams, and I'm sure every entrepreneur should start the dreams. I always say, dream big, start small. And that's a slogan which you need to multiply. And that becomes the whole hyper cycle of your business model. All right. Let me talk a little about I'm just sharing a few of my thoughts where innovations can be worked out. As I told you that innovations can happen in as many areas as possible. Let me talk about food and food production. Today, if you probably see, food security has become a major issue. Agriculture, you see today the issues that are happening in our country and in the rest of the world. We need to really focus in an area which is available. According to statistics, reliable statistics, almost 35% of the land becomes uncultivable because of a lot of weeds, and the cultivable land becomes less. John Deere introduced weeding machine by which it removes the weeds so that your cultivation can become optimized to almost 90% to 95%. So your per hectare productivity will increase. So increase the productivity, increase the fertility of the soil. There could be a lot of ways in which soil conservation can be made, recycling can be made. I'm just sharing two important uh, organizations which is doing very, very strongly. One is the Swiss Nutrition Valley. The Swiss Nutrition Valley is an organization, as you know, the Swiss is very famous for chocolates. It's not only famous for chocolates, but also producing more nutritious food. Now, these people are making what is called as more sustainable organic food. And they are coming out with different kind of crops which are biodegradable. At the same time, they can increase the productivity in terms of multiple cropping system. You may possibly go to their website and see and get more information. The other company, I'm very close to Singapore, is because I always consider Singapore is one country that could become a role model for India. A small country, a small city country, but has the greatest vision. Vertical farming operated an area of about 5 acres is just controlled by two people through vertical farming. The SDG innovative system is under the UN model, which is believed to be one of its kind for building sustainable food production. Extremely interesting, extremely innovative, and I'm sure if one of you guys can think about building this kind of a model in a semi-rural place, it can certainly feed the local population, create a surplus, and we can also export, will be a part of our Make in India movement. So there is great scope in the food production. Transportation. One of the things that we always face today is the problem of getting quality transportation and intelligence transportation system. Innovation is beyond reach. I'm just giving you just an example today how the futuristic transportation will run. I would probably say everything will be AI driven. We ride in China is a model which is a robotic taxi which goes and runs through an app. All that you need to say that this is my space where I'm standing, my location. The robotic taxi comes to your place, just drive the car and leave the car wherever you want and then walk away, just pay the bill. That's it. So what you're going to see in future is more intelligent transportation system. We need to build not only transportation system in terms of infrastructure, but also in terms of reducing the emission. So Germany brought a very interesting transportation system way back, which is called the Bombardier transportation. The entire system of their railways is multi-battery electric utility vehicle. It's electric multiple units. The trains are transportation is run through electric batteries and they have almost zero emission. And this could be what one can invest, one can think, because government may in the future bring privatization of public transportation system. And we go into the medical field. This is a matter of concern to all of us today. I vaguely remember when I a year ago supported to the government a model which is called HIT technology, that is health information technology. I never knew that was way back in 2019 that we need to be cautious on the data of the people and prevent the disease from getting expanded. And I never knew that COVID would be one of the test cases which I would take it. So in the medical and the health sciences, there is a large scope. AI diagnosis, monitoring, using artificial robotics for surgery, imaging, and using different ways in which diagnosis can become accurate. I just made a prediction uh, talking to a few of the scientists in overseas when they said that maybe by 2030, 35, we may not require to go to a doctor. Because when you go to a doctor, because you might require them, but fundamentally, we should go from symptom-based medicine to scientific medicine. When you go to a doctor, the first thing he asks you, what is your problem? And he goes through your symptoms and based on which the medicines are prescribed. That you can probably do just paying $1 through an AI through the Google. So medical technology will be driven more by AI operations, which is going to be very successful. So there could be a large amount of investors, VCs, who will be ready to invest in those areas. The last area which I thought of bringing into your notice is building materials, because I'm looking into more on building a better ecosystem. Building materials are one of the major sources by which carbon emission increases. There are two companies which you can probably go and see how they make lighter materials. They are able to make it more stronger materials that would be able to build huge infrastructures. It can reduce the carbon emission. Carbon footprints can come down to a minimum. At the same time, they can be used both for domestic as well as for commercial uses. So extensive research is already underway in the developed countries of the world where innovation and entrepreneurship have gone together. India can become one since our population needs dwelling. Our population requires more livable places. Ori Space Systems is another interesting company which actually builds a 500 from a 500 square feet of space to 1,000 square feet. This is through 3D design, digital design. So space designers can now give you a larger space to stay, which is utility based compared to the actual space that is available to you. Right. If I would probably say, if this has been the slogan and these are the options that are available to you, I would like to speak on a little about some of the success stories and how they actually maneuvered. I always have a passion to speak about this gentleman, Henry Ford, who had a passion to build cars. His story is very, 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 very interesting. He used to go at the backyard of his house and used to watch the horse carriages and used to find how can I substitute the horses and the carriages to move through automatic system. And that was his thought that made him to build the cars. Henry Ford was not only an innovator, but also an entrepreneur of the previous generation. He was a man who really steered with extremely challenging conditions. A man who never even thought of building a car started his life by building refrigerators. A product which all of you take is Coca-Cola was built, or I would probably say the company is built by two people, but the man who really got the recipe is John Smith. It was nothing but a small medical prescription given by a doctor who sold it for an urgent amount of $1,100. A medical prescription of $1,100 got into a billion-dollar company in 1929 onwards, and we still have the same Coca-Cola. How could they do this? This is where your innovation and your success comes. Starbucks, Jerry Baldwin and Gordon Broker and Zvi Seigel, all of them are never been into business. And all of them are people from the academia, but decided to set up because they had a passion to drink coffee. This is how the company came up. So it is not necessary that you need to have a business background to start a business. Steve Jobs started his life from calligraphy, never went to a university education. He made his first entry into Stanford and then said, "This is the first time I'm entering a university," but made a difference in making a product which all of us are creditable. At the same time, we consider as a product which we will go a long way in our life. Today we talk about electric, and the world is going to be electric. That's what Elon Musk said. And he once said a few years ago, Shanghai to San Francisco in 29 minutes. And he made the SpaceX. And his dream came true. But these men never came everything on the platter. Elon Musk was almost bankrupt, but revived. Started with 2 people in 2003. All these stories are the stories of those who have undergone a roller coaster, but became successful and have left their footprints in the industry and have become the great entrepreneurs the world can ever produce. The last but not the least is our Indian entrepreneur, Dhirubhai Ambani ji, who made, I would call, a cornerstone in the Indian industry that supports not only in building the industries, but making millions of people to move above the poverty level, to give them the healthcare, to give them the confidence that we are here to make your dreams come true. These people are not just ordinary, but ordinary people with an extraordinary vision. And that is why I consider them as global trotters, because they have made a mark globally. So what's the message? The message is very clear. If you want to be an entrepreneur, begin from now. Many times I always tell my students, you don't have to go and work in a company and begin after 5 years to set up a company. I don't think you need to work for somebody and transfer your knowledge. Start by yourself from the day when you leave the college. You may fail, but please remember, you would be a person 2 years later to employ people. And that can happen only when you get motivated. Motivation is the key to your success. Accept your criticism. If somebody says that your speech today was not up to the mark, I would take it more happily, because next time I will be more prepared. If somebody says your product doesn't sell well, I will take it positively, because I will probably consider this is something what I did not observe. So criticism is elevation. So good entrepreneurs always will say, critics can be somewhere who could drive. So be the driving engine, be the leader, be the motivator. Extrapolate the past. Many times people speak more on the past, so extrapolate and invent the future. Because the future is unknown, but can be predictable based on circumstances. It is inventable. Did we ever think creating a vaccine? Did we ever think of getting an electric car? So invent the future. To achieve this, you need to be a leader and believe in yourself. The only way in which a successful entrepreneur comes up is believing in himself, believing his philosophy, and believing in his dreams. I always say Silicon Valley is not just a place, but a culture. Many seeds are sown, few survive and make large corporations. But Silicon Valley is a place where you explore, test, experiment, do everything because the environment makes you to be motivated. I'm just adding a few quotes. Probably this could be a driver. It is better to try and fail than fail to try. Vinod Khosla, one of the famous, is most respected venture capitalist in the United States and the world. Some people don't like change, but you need to embrace change if alternative is disaster. Elon Musk, his story is itself could be a testimony for you to be a young entrepreneur to go through the roller coaster. Steve Jobs made a very interesting statement. Innovation distinguish between leader and a follower. So want to be a follower or a leader, decide by yourself. This is my thought process. Persistence is the key to success. You should always be persistent. Keep tapping the door will open one day. But unless and until you do this consistently, success will not follow. I suppose I try to cover as many thought processes within the time that was given to me, and I consider that this is something like giving you a thought process, an awakening. Even if one person who will listen to this session is able to make a change, I think my mission is accomplished. I once again thank you, all the audience and the organizers listening to me. I'm open for questions, and I would love to get any emails from you because I work for both the local and international organizations, and we build uh, incubation centers internationally. So your organization is a very distinctive organization. I went through the website, and if your organization needs any support or any help or any student, I'll be more than happy to support in whatever best possible way. Thank you very much. Any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.